Federal Reserve is raising the
Fed is
interest rate.
set to raise interest rates.
Highest inflation.
From ever-increasing interest rates to inflation that seems like it's going to wipe away our savings, what the heck even lies ahead for the global economy in 2024? As the world's financial gaze turns towards the year ahead, we find ourselves standing at the crossroads of possibility and uncertainty. The global economy's trajectory seems destined for heights of decadence and opulence. Yet, beneath this facade of riches lies a complex narrative of ambition, risk, and the relentless pursuit of success. Join us on a journey through the details of the global economy in 2024, where the allure of prosperity conceals a story of resilience and adaptation. Navigate the shifting sands of international trade, the rising tide of technological innovation, and the ever-present specter of geopolitical tension. For in the global economy of 2024, the path to fortune is paved with both promise and peril, and the key to success lies in understanding the forces that shape our financial future. Before we get started, let's reveal a shocking surprise. You see, as 2023 wraps up, the world economy is actually doing better than expected. The US avoided a recession and its economy has been growing steadily. Job numbers look good, and more importantly, prices are going down in most places. Still, things are pretty unpredictable. Interest rates going up could cause some issues as conflicts are causing problems globally and climate-related disasters are happening more often. Having said that, the next 5 years might be rough for the global economy. Looking ahead to 2024, things are going to stay tricky and uncertain, but there are some important things to watch out for. Is the era of untamed inflation over? In June 2022, the cost of living in the US shot up by more than 9%, but since then, it's dropped a lot. In November of that same year, the cost of living was at 3.1%, which is quite close to the 2% target set by the Fed. Some good news comes from rent prices, which are a big part of what people spend. They're not rising as fast, but it takes time for this to reflect in the inflation numbers since most renters sign year-long leases. So, while it might seem like inflation is almost under control, there's a delay in seeing it in the data. Even economist Matthew Klein points out that we're not completely out of the woods yet. He thinks most of the huge price increases in 2021 to 2022 were linked to pandemic-related events and the Ukraine situation. These effects peaked in mid-2022 and have since faded. Still, overall inflation is a bit higher than before the pandemic because both wages and spending are going up a bit faster. When people spend more, keeping inflation at 2% for a long time gets tough. The Federal Reserve is feeling optimistic, keeping interest rates steady and hinting at possible rate cuts in 2024. But Harvard finance professor Mihir Desai has warned that it might not be smooth sailing. Getting inflation down to 2% might take longer and be bumpier, especially without a big economic slowdown. It's like the saying goes, the last bit of the journey back home is the longest. Meanwhile, in Europe, the war in Ukraine has hit energy prices hard. So the European Central Bank and Bank of England are a bit more cautious in their statements compared to the US Central Bank. But enough about inflation, now let's talk about the labor market. Is the historically good labor market over? For a while, there was a big argument about whether we'd need more people to be out of work to bring prices down. Luckily, that hasn't been the case. According to Klein, right now is one of the best times ever to find a job. Lots of folks in their prime working years are employed, though it's not quite as high as in the late 1990s. Plus, fewer people are working part-time when they actually want full-time jobs, which is great. However, the job market is slowing down a bit. Over the past year, LinkedIn says that there have been fewer new hires and there aren't as many job openings for each person looking for work. But the US unemployment rate is still pretty low, and according to The Economist, things are looking good for workers in the long run, both in the US and Europe. But it does make you wonder, can financial markets handle higher interest rates? In March 2023, Silicon Valley Bank faced a bank run and was taken over by the FDIC. So what happened there? Higher interest rates made its bond investments less valuable, worrying its customers and causing problems. Soon after, Signature Bank and First Republic faced similar issues and failed. These higher rates are affecting bond owners and making borrowing more expensive. Could this mess up financial markets next year? Well, the effects of higher rates are happening, it's just they're happening slower than expected. It's like a gradual slowdown for the economy, causing ongoing problems rather than a sudden crash. The slowdown might not seem so chaotic right away, but it could stick around longer and be harder for policymakers to fix since there's not much room when it comes to fiscal and monetary tools. In the US, companies facing financial trouble went up a lot this year, though it's not as bad as during the big financial crisis. Klein points out that many businesses have debts with changing interest rates, and some might start feeling the squeeze. But looking at countries like Australia, Canada, Europe, and the UK, which have more short-term borrowing, strong growth can help manage these higher costs. While it might be tough for some, the overall impact on the economy might not be huge. Not to mention, 2024 holds additional concerns for the global economy. China is a big question mark. When they shifted from strict COVID measures, people thought spending would shoot up and oil prices would rise. But that didn't happen. Now, they seem keen on investing heavily in manufacturing, which could shake things up globally. There are also questions about the stock market's intense focus on certain companies and whether AI will deliver as expected. If not, it could impact stocks and financial conditions. There's also talk about China's potential economic slowdown versus India's rise and how that might change world politics and economics. Plus, politics, especially with the US election, could stir up more uncertainty. China's unclear data affecting its growth, disruptions in global shipping, and Argentina's economy facing a possible default can also cause problems in 2024. These risks paint a picture of continued uncertainty despite a somewhat better US economic outlook. Overall, the year ahead seems like a Jenga tower. It looks sturdy from the top, but there are many missing pieces, making the whole structure unstable and unpredictable. On top of that, it's the era of the weakest growth for the global economy. The World Bank is worried that the global economy is expected to grow at its lowest rate since the pandemic. They predict a growth of only 2.4% in 2024, which is quite sluggish and primarily attributed to higher interest rates. Conflicts in regions like Ukraine and the Middle East are also hurting global trade and investment. The US economy remains relatively resilient with a projected growth of around 2.6% last year. However, the chief economist at the World Bank is concerned that this low growth trend will leave many developing countries, especially the poorest ones, stuck in difficult situations due to high levels of debt and limited access to food for a significant portion of their populations. Geopolitical tensions like the Israel-Hamas conflict and disruptions in key shipping routes are worsening matters, potentially leading to inflationary issues. Higher borrowing costs due to increased interest rates in major economies are also affecting poorer countries, making it harder for them to afford necessary borrowing. The report highlights how wealthier nations are rebounding better from the pandemic compared to poorer nations. By the end of 2024, it's expected that all advanced economies will surpass their pre-pandemic per capita income levels, but emerging economies might lag behind significantly, especially the poorest nations. Concerns about rising food prices, especially after a substantial increase in rice prices, are alarming too. China's economy is also facing challenges with reduced consumer spending and ongoing issues in its property sector, projecting a slower growth rate of about 4.5%. The overall forecast for the 5 years until 2024 points to the slowest period of global economic growth in 3 decades. There's hope that increased efforts by governments, particularly in encouraging private sector investments, could address challenges like climate change and energy transitions, potentially improving this trend. So, in this era of slow growth, maybe the world should look at Japan. Wait, that seems pretty darn random. Why would we bother looking at Japan to solve the global economic issues? Well, 2 decades ago, Japan was the world's second largest economy, with predictions that it might surpass the US. But since the 1990s, Japan's growth has been stagnant, overtaken by China and lagging behind the USA. However, more recently, Japan has shown signs of a potential economic recovery, intriguing economists. Factors indicating Japan's possible recovery include their unique approach to living standards and handling issues like housing affordability, which is commendable despite facing economic challenges. The housing market reflects how Japan offers affordable homes due to fewer zoning restrictions. But all of this teaches us one thing. While short-term metrics might not heavily impact everyday lives, long-term productivity is crucial for a nation's competitiveness and quality of life. Japan's situation serves as a reminder that economies need to adapt to remain globally competitive and offer opportunities for growth and development. But the question is, do you think the world economy will surpass all expectations in 2024, or will its growth remain sluggish? Let us know in the comments and subscribe to our channel for more videos just like this.